Hey, welcome back to Frank's Model Works. I'm Frank. We're at part 6. Last episode, we got the body painted, fixed a problem that came up, and in this episode, we're going to be getting the body ready for clear coat and actually applying the clear coat. Now, I'm shooting this after all of that work has been done, and the results are in the background. Were they a success? Did I run into problems? You gotta watch the episode and find out. You'll notice that in the thumbnail of this series, I have a black 1968 Charger. That is this model. This is recognizable to a lot of people as the Bullet Charger from the 1968 movie starring Steve McQueen. This was the car that was getting chased and chasing and following Steve McQueen, and then he's chasing them, and then they wind up jumping into a gas station and exploding. This car is a 1968 Charger RT, no stripes on it. It's a 440 4-speed with a black vinyl top, black paint, which is it's kind of a difficult color to paint and have it look good because everything shows up in it. Every swirl, every scratch, every piece of dust is going to show up in black paint. So it's better that you cut your teeth on a couple of more forgiving colors like greens and blues and even reds. White, believe it or not, is a difficult color to paint because you don't get as much coverage, and it's hard to get a match if you run out of one. Like, there are warm whites and there are cold whites, and that's a discussion for another day. But stick around. We got a lot of stuff going on in this episode, so let's get started. When last you saw this body, we had just finished up the repair on the roof, and we summed up the 5th part of this series by stating the next episode would be getting ready for paint. Well, now, not ready for paint, for clear coat. It would help if I knew where we are in this series. So as I'm filming this, part 5 of the series just released on YouTube. So waiting for the inevitable notifications that something's going on. But whatever. Now, one of the questions that will always come up: do you wet sand between coats? And do you wet sand between color coats and your clear coat? And the answer is, it's largely dependent upon the status of what's covering your body. Now, if you remember in the last episode, when I fixed the problem with that gouge that was in the paint over here, you'll notice that I also wet sanded the rest of the roof. And I kind of did that for a reason. If you look right there, you see that light bulb, the reflection of that light bulb? That looks very distinct. And, ooh, I got some of my fingerprints on there. All right, doesn't matter. That reflection of the light bulb is much more distinct than it is on the roof, on the trunk. There is orange peel in this color coat over here. Now, is it bad enough? Is orange peel bad enough that you can't clear over it? Again, that's a judgment call that you're going to have to learn to make on your own. For my purposes, because I'm trying to get the best finish that I possibly can out of this, I am probably going to wet sand this. And you're probably thinking to yourself, wait a minute, you can't wet sand metallics. Well, my response to that is, this was wet sanded, and that doesn't look too bad. And this is before the clear is even on. So, in the case, I will make the following assertion and defend it with evidence. In the case of MCW Automotive Finishes gloss metallic lacquers, now let me be clear when I say lacquers. My experience has taught me that I absolutely positively can wet sand and get a nice finish without polish, because that comes later, but wet sand their metallic paint to achieve a nicer finish and a nicer base to put a clear coat on, which is what I'm going to do now. Now, as far as their enamels, I have not as yet painted a body with MCW enamels. So I can't speak from a position of experience as to the answer to that question. But in the case of, say, splash paints base coat, that's a candy. So in the case of base coat dries to a matte finish. It has a very slight sheen to it, but if you looked at it, it's not shiny. So what happens when you paint a body with base coat and say, for the sake of argument, there's a piece of dust in it? You would just sand the piece of dust out and reapply the base coat. You're not sanding to get a shine. Now, when you're painting with a gloss lacquer like MCW Automotive Finishes, when you wet sand, either between coats or between color coats and clear coat, you're actually going, because it's a gloss lacquer, your wet sanding is going to create a glossy finish. So from there, you might actually look at it and say, you know what, that's actually close enough to a factory finish that I'm going for. I like that. So it becomes a judgment call on your part. And that's why I don't want to tell you one way or another. I just want to show you the way I do it and the reasons why I do it and the results that I get. And then, listen to you regale me with stories of what you do, which is cool. I got no problem with that. But this is the way that I do it, and for the most part, I would say 90% of the model cars that I build are painted either with MCW Automotive Finishes lacquer or Splash Paints base coat. So you can take it. You can take whatever I say with a grain of salt, and this is a very specific application. But you should also keep in mind that just those two paint brands and lines of paint themselves, you can get just about any automotive color made for you, because they can mix. Both vendors can mix custom paint for you. So take it with a grain of salt, but some people love their enamels, swear by their enamels, love their rattle cans, swear by their rattle cans. To me, rattle cans, I got no beef. I'm showing how I do it, and believe it or not, you could probably extrapolate between what I say with other paint brands and other paint systems. It's just, as far as the metallic is concerned, if you're going to see me in the next couple of minutes wet sand and polish a metallic color coat. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because I have experience with wet sanding MCW Automotive Finishes gloss lacquer, even in a metallic. The metallic in Mr. Guest's paint is very, very fine, and it's very good at what it does. Where did that come from? That literally just happened. Did I just tap that? All right, well, we'll get it out. Don't worry about it. So, here we go. This is going to be another one of those, if I need to tell you something, I'll probably speed through, because I'm trying to keep these things as relatively short as possible, just to give you the information and then proceed from there. Okay, so what I'm going to start out exactly the way that I did on when I was fixing the roof. I'm going to start with 1000 grit of this DSPIAE. Hold on a second. Let me get some more sanding films and I'll show you what other options you may have. Hold on. Okay, we're back. So Two of the other polishing systems that I use are 3M Trizact. Very specific. If you look for these on Amazon, or if you can get them at a store, these are the foam-backed sheets. The full sheet looks like this, comes in a box like this, 30190. So if you look on Amazon, that's what'll come up. One of these boxes I think is like 15 bucks, or at least it was when I bought it. And it came with 5 sheets, and I've probably done maybe 2 years, and I still have 3 whole sheets left. So then I also, the accompanying follow-up grit is 3M Trizact 30189 5000 grit. Same characteristics, foam backed, and it's a cloth. So I like them, but I use them. I've resorted to using them when I have a pretty good finish to begin with. In the rare occasion that I get something on that doesn't have orange peel or 7,000 pieces of dust in it, then this is what I'll use, because this is a fairly delicate method. These are not really, really tough grits. I will also use this set, and I'll link to all this stuff in the description. But this set I got from the company who makes this is called GodHand. They're actually the same company that makes my nippers. This set comes with a wide range, so going up from, like, you can see right here, 240 grit. It says 240 grit, and then 10,000 grit over here, and it goes all the way up. And between the two bags, you get every grit in between, and they actually go pretty far. They're not that bad. I actually kind of like these. That was until I got this set from DSPIAE, which will also be linked in the description. So let's get started. And as always, my ultimate modeling products, buffers. I gotta try to find a link to these things where you can get them in the States. I gotta find it. I'll try to get some type of link to these down in the description. I gotta be honest with you, it's been hard. So, and we are gonna wet sand. We're gonna start on the trunk. Now, one thing that you're gonna wanna do, just for your own mental health, is very carefully protect your corners. Especially this, because on a 68 and a 69 Charger, the trunk pops up like that, and you'll catch this, and the next thing you know, you've burned through the paint. So we're just doing this to protect the character line at the end of the trunk, so that we don't burn through as easily. As I progress, I'm also going to put tape along here, along these character lines, and on the hood. This line right here at this peak in the hood, if you stare at this long enough, it'll burn through. That's how, this is a rough, you got to be real careful. This is a rough one to touch up. You're basically going to have to repaint it, but that's part of preparing for your session of finishing and working on your finish, is identifying the spots that could be a problem. And you have to look for peaks, you have to look for character lines, things that stick up. These over here, you don't necessarily, also, you really need to polish the flanks, because that's where most of the light's going to reflect anyway. As long as these main areas look good, like you really realistically can't expect to get in there. You can, I mean, if you really want to, but you're going to drive yourself nuts trying to get that. So, but we're going to work on the trunk and see what we got to do here. At this stage, I wouldn't recommend like compounding after sanding because it might be a little bit too premature. Right now, what we're doing is we're building a foundation for the clear coat. We got the color on, and we have adequate coverage with the color. So we're going to try to make sure that we have the best foundation possible for our clear coat. All right. So I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to sand. Okay, I'm starting with the DSPIAE 1000 grit. Just be careful in this around panel lines. Just be careful because you could get high spots with the paint. If your paint builds up in these areas, you're going to have a high spot, and then you're going to have a valley in here and in here. So just be careful, be cognizant of it. So I'm not really going across this panel line too much. I'm jumping over it. So it might look like I'm digging in. I'm actually not. I'm just putting the weight of my finger up against the sander, and it is a very light touch. And what I'm trying to accomplish in this is flattening down the paint so that there's no more orange peel, so that you can't see the orange peel anymore. Also, you might notice that I'm alternating the direction, and a lot of times people will say that, you know, you shouldn't within the same grit. Within the same grit, you can alternate your directions. It's probably not a good idea to do swirls with sanding. It's probably not a good idea. Not at this level. I mean, maybe you could do it on a real car. I don't know. But at this level, swirls, especially with a metallic, the reason why people say, oh, you shouldn't wet sand metallic paint is because the flake could come out and then it becomes a grit itself and it starts scratching. But like I said before, the grit on MCW is such a fine grit that, the flake is such a fine flake that I haven't had the swirling experience that you would get, which is why if you're gonna do this, I can't stress it enough, never practice on your project. Always practice on either a test mule, get a kit that you looked at and you're like, I'm not gonna build this, you know, like maybe you paid $5, or buy a rebuilder, buy something at a show, strip the paint off and do whatever you gotta do, and then practice on that. Get yourself a paint mule and practice on that. Okay, so if you could see, what I did was flattened the orange peel on the trunk. Now I'm going to pause the filming, and I'm going to do that for the rest of the body, and then I'll move on to the next grit. Okay? Hold on. All right, I'm popping in because in the process of flattening out the paint that I'm working on, I ran into a couple of problems. Now, I don't think I've ever said that I'm perfect or that I'm a really spectacular builder or painter, for that matter. I've always said I'm average. So I do run into problems, and I'm not a fan of just dipping it into a tank and starting all over again. I am a proponent of fixing. So in the case of what happened, I'm going to put you up on the tripod and show you exactly what happened. But just in general, what I think I'm running into, you notice the texture that was in the paint. It looked like orange peel, which could be too thick of a paint, too far away from the surface. But you saw how I was spraying it when I was actually putting the color coats on. I think what was happening is because of the atmospheric conditions, it's very dry down here, but it's summer. So no matter what, it's still, even though it's a fairly even temperature down here, the summer atmosphere in Suffolk County, New York is more humid, and I think it could have affected the finish that was going onto the paint, in that it was tightening up onto the body. Not necessarily cracking or anything like that, but I think the remedy for it is going to be to add Mr. Color Leveling Thinner to the next color coat. And when I put you up there, I'm going to show you why I need to do another color coat. All right, hold on. Okay. The reason why I'm going to show you what went wrong is I don't want to be disingenuous, and just where I left off with me using the 1000 grit out of the DSPIAE set and trying to rough up the surface so that I could get out the orange peel that was in here. That led to me realizing that I was in a little bit of a worse situation than I initially thought. So I abandoned the progressing through the grits of the DSPIAE set, and I jumped immediately to the 3000 grit Trizact from 3M. This is the 5000, this is the 3000. And again, there will be a link to this in the description. It turns out it's more expensive than I thought it was. This box is like 22 bucks, and this box of 5000 is 34 bucks. But I've had both of these boxes for probably 3 years now, and I've only used 2 sheets out of and I've used this on almost all of the bodies that I've worked on in the past 3 years. So I did jump to the Trizact 3000 and just dead flattened all of the surfaces here. What wound up happening is also I found in a lot of spots, because this is fire pit season out here in Suffolk County, there was actual cinders in the paint, like little black specks, because everybody and their mother out here is, sitting around a fire pit every night. Which, all right, whatever, cool. I don't want to ruin anybody's fun, but your cinders are in my basement. So I went over the entire body with the 3000 grit just to flatten it down. I am going to add another color coat onto this. And the reason why I think you saw the way I was spraying when I sprayed this color on. I think the orange peel wasn't necessarily a result of my distance to subject. I think it's a result of the atmosphere. The paint itself is flashing before it has a chance to level out on the surface. So that could lead to orange peel. And the remedy for that, if you're using MCW Automotive finishes, is to I add Mr. Color Leveling Thinner to it. because MCW is pre-thinned, I wouldn't go with a 1-to-1 ratio. I would add 3 parts of pre-thinned MCW Automotive Finishes lacquer to 1 part of Mr. Color Leveling Thinner in order to thin the paint out and reduce the chances of getting the orange peel that I had in the surface. And as I was looking at it and thinking about what happened here, that's what dawned on me. And I've actually done that in the past to fix it. So we're here now. The good thing about the 3M is that it doesn't really leave really deep scratches in your surface. So from here, it's possible just to give it a quick rinse, let it dry, or hit it with a compressed air or a hair dryer just to get the moisture out of it, and then spray it again with the MCW Automotive Finishes lacquer, 3 parts and to 1 part Mr. Color Leveling Thinner. And again, what that's going to do is it's going to give the paint a chance to smooth out before it flashes. And it's also any moisture that might be. It hasn't been super humid around here lately, but if you're in an area that's humid, you might want to consider adding some type of retarder to the paint that you're using, depending on the paint that you're using. So it's just something to keep in mind. Now, as far as the hood goes, I was getting that ready, and you might be able to see right there. You see that differential in the surface? That's not a burn through. That comes some kind of blooming or maybe even moisture. So, and naturally I did burn through over here. I got a little fleck of dust in this corner and I burned through. So got to throw another coat onto this. But I'm getting the embers out and work continues. So next I'll set up over at the spray booth and we'll throw another coat on this and see how we do. All right, hold on. Hey, we're over by the spray booth. I got the fan on. I already added some color to this cup. I'm gonna add Mr. Color Leveling Thinner. Like an aristocrat. Pinky's out. I'm trying to do this quick. I'm actually shooting this on the 4th of July and we're having a barbecue later. So I should be upstairs helping, but, you know, priorities. You guys. Hope you appreciate it, because I'm going to get yelled at for this. I'm going to get yelled at anyway. I mean, let's face it. Okay, we got the paint on the hood, so now we'll do the body. Let's hope this goes well. So we'll see how that looks after the barbecue. All right, I'm gonna let that go dry overnight. I actually ran into a similar problem with the 69 body that's gonna be part of the the video about putting a mod top decal on the roof. And the solution is the same thing. But I wanted to show that step. I didn't want to just like present a painted body that looks like, oh look, I just have a couple of swipes to do with a sanding stick and, you know, a wipe here and there, and we can go right to clear. Wasn't ready for clear. And I wanna give you the opportunity to know what to do if you're in that situation, because I find myself in that situation all the time. I don't know how many times I have to say it. I'm an idiot. I mess up constantly. But I've received good enough results at the end of the effort that I put into it that it keeps me motivated to continue doing it and fix whatever problems I run into. So, if anything, I hope you find at least that part helpful. Not that the DSPIAE set is a disappointment for this. It's not that it was a disappointment to me, because there's nothing wrong with the product. The problem was what I was using the product on, which was something that I painted, and it wasn't really the right fit for that, which is why I jumped from the 1,000 grit out of the DSPIAE set to the 3,000 grit Trizact. And I understand a lot of people are going to balk at that price, but I got to be honest with you, that 3,000 grit and 5,000 grit Trizact has bailed me out a bunch of times over the years, and it goes a long way. What is that, $60? Even if I had to buy a box of each a year, $60 a year for what it does for me, it's worth it. You know, I try to before I did the channel, I was getting probably 10 to 12 models done a year at a fairly respectable level of finish. So that's not a lot of money to lay out for that. So once this dries, we'll see where we're at, see what we have to do, and then we'll just progress from there. I just didn't want to be disingenuous and just present something. Oh look, here's something that I didn't mess up, and because if you can't produce those results and you can't get to the point where I am, then you might not ever want to take it a step further. And I want you to take it a step further, okay? So I'm gonna go help set up for the barbecue. Hopefully enjoy the rest of the 4th of July. And we'll talk to you in a second. For you, it's going to be a second. For me, it's going to be a day. Time flies when you're having fun. All right. See ya. It is now the 5th of July. The barbecue was a wonderful success. As usual, Mrs. Steffens, my wife, prepared entirely too much food. Just a ridiculous amount of food. And people were passing out from being so full. But anyway, the bodies have dried, and in the condition that they're in now, I don't see any major textural problems with the paint. I don't see really any huge pieces of dust in them. I think I dodged a bullet with this body and with the body of the 69, in that there's no embers in. I was talking before. There's actual embers in the hood of the green car, and I had to sand them out and paint that again. And it's definitely not. I know somebody's going to either email me or comment down below, and they're going to say, no, it's the flake turning over. It's not the flake turning over. It's too fine. These are actual, you can see, they're like pieces of black charcoal that, and it's not in the paint. It's getting trapped in the atmosphere and falling onto the paint when it's wet. So, if you could, I'm sure you're not, but if you could, just trust me, it's embers. It happens to me every year around this time, and it dies off in August when people stop with the fire pits. So, these bodies, I don't think I'm going to do any more to them. I'm going to see how the hood comes out on the green one. Make sure that they match, which, you know, that helps. And then I will, from there, apply the clear coat. and when that is happening, I will bring you back in, so hold on. Over at the spray booth, we're going to be applying Lacquer Clear, specifically MCW Automotive Finishes 1017 Gloss Clear Lacquer. Can is, I think at the time that I bought it was 45 bucks, but you're talking 20, 30 cars worth of clear, and it probably more. And it's pretty versatile stuff. Now, as with the color coats that we put on, because of the atmospheric conditions in my area at this time of year, and because of our experiences with, you know, the paint needing to level out, the lacquer needing to level out before flashing, and it didn't do that, and the problems that we had, right off the bat, I'm going to, even though this can be sprayed right out of the can, I'm going to mix this 3 parts clear to 1 part thinner, Mr. Color Leveling Thinner, just so that we don't experience the problem with the clear. As well, repeat our results that we found gave us the better finish with the color coats on the clear coat. The paint discipline and technique are going to be very similar. I'm going to get the bottoms, the arches, all of that stuff first, inside of details like those little character vent holes on the doors of the Chargers, and then large areas with sweeping motions. So I'll stop speaking because I'm sure I'm very close to the limit of length on the video, and just go. All right, hold on. The clear coat has dried overnight, and it came out not too bad. And there's the usual couple of dust boogers in here, but there's not a lot of texture in the clear coat. It should wet sand and polish pretty well on the avocado green. And here is the B7 blue that's going to be on the tutorial on putting a mod top on your model car, so keep an eye out for that. Hood came out pretty nice, and it does match the rest of the car, so I don't have to worry too much about that. So there's no differential. I've done it. I've mentioned before that I've dropped hoods that were soaking wet, like just sprayed, off onto the floor, and had to repaint them, and it happens. So now the majority of the activities that are going to be taking place in the Frank's Model Works workshop is going to be wet sanding and polishing bodies, because I have 1, 2. This is the body for the 71 Mach 1 Mustang from Revell. That's been clear coated with 2K clear from Splash Paints. Here's the hood for it. I got a pretty decent sized booger right there, if you could see, that I got to get out. That is not nice, but 2K is pretty tough. It's pretty resilient, so I might not burn through on doing that. In addition to that, hold on to your hats, kids. I have one aubergine, that's the name of the color, Porsche Cayman, that has to be wet sanded and polished. A Guards Red 911 that has to be sanded and polished. A beige gray 911 that has to be sanded and polished. Let's get them all in frame. I have an iris blue 911. This one's got a lot of gook in it. It's got a lot of, not texture, but it's got a lot of dust in it. There was something about this body. I don't know what was going on with it. I probably should have discharged the static electricity on it somehow, but I'll be able to get that done. Then there's this slate blue Boxster Porsche, and finally this very understated Viper green, which is, you know, a very calm and sedate color. GT3, GT2 body. Actually, most of this car is painted in this color. Basically, the only thing that's not gonna be this color are the seats. So this is gonna be a wild looking car. The finish on this came out really nice. I'm liking the way this looks. So I got a good month's worth of polishing and wet sanding and polishing here. So that's what I'm going to be working on for the foreseeable future. But you're going to be coming along for the ride if you're going to stick with the body finishing series. I'm going to put you back up on the tripod. There I go again, saying tripod, and we'll sum up what we did in this episode. I am going to be a wet sanding and polishing fool for the next couple of weeks with all those bodies that I have to polish. But I'm glad that this turned out as well as it did. This is actually a good solid base. I'm not really going to have to correct a lot of problems with this clear. I'm glad that I took the extra steps and the time to prepare for this, and it demonstrates that your foundation work is incredibly important to what you wind up with in the end. And when you apply solid techniques, you get better results. So hopefully this episode has demonstrated that. In the next episode, we are going to be wet sanding and polishing and showing you what goes on with that. You saw a little bit of it in this episode, but we're actually going to do some real cutting and getting this down to a smooth surface and then building it back up to a high gloss finish that if you enter a contest, the late great Don Yost said 70 to 85% of the judging in a model car contest comes down to the paint. It's true. But even for your own personal gratification, a really nice looking high gloss finish on a model car, hard to beat. And it's a tremendous accomplishment. You feel great once you've got one down. I'll see if I can find a picture. I'll put it up now of the first time I achieved a really good finish on a model car was a 1965 Malibu Z16 from Revell. I'll see if I can find a picture and I'll put it up. That was the first time I actually wet sanded and polished all the way through the grits and got a decent finish. And I wound up giving the car away, but I wish I still had that model so I could compare it to what I'm building now and see if I've progressed. I think I have. I think I can produce the results more consistently. And that leads to greater enjoyment of the hobby in general. So I invite you to stick around. I realize as I do these episodes, my numbers for them are waning off, but I appreciate the people that are sticking through. I think it's going to be a help for you in the long run. With that said, as always, I got Frizzo's back. I appreciate your support more than you will ever know. Sometimes people are fighting battles, and you don't realize the positive impact you make on people's lives just by being there, and I appreciate it. If you're hearing what I'm saying right now, just know I'm going through a little something right now, and I appreciate your support. I really do, more than you'll ever know. Until we speak again, my friends, take care of yourselves and be well.